Hey guys, tonight we drift into the shadowy corners of ancient Greece, not to admire the Acropolis or revel in Olympic glory, but to pluck the frayed strings of a much darker legacy. You're standing backstage beneath a crumbling amphitheater. Your robe clings to your back, soaked with sweat. The cheers outside aren't for you. They're for the general who slaughtered his way to the front row and now expects his lyre solo with wine and flattery. You swallow your nerves, strum once, and feel the weight of 1,000 expectations press against your ribs. Being a musician in this world isn't art. It's survival. There's this illusion modern folk have picturing ancient Greek musicians bathed in candlelight, gently composing odes to Apollo. But your property, an ornament, a well-fed slave if you're lucky dead, if your chord displeases the wrong noble. You probably won't survive this, to be honest. Not unless you master the art of playing exactly what they want, exactly when they want it, and never one note too bold. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where you all listen from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're young, maybe 12, maybe 14. No one really keeps count unless your age increases your value. You've got fingers that haven't yet been ruined by labor, which makes you a perfect candidate. Your voice still rings clear, no whiskey rasp, no gravel in the throat from yelling over a crowd. One day, you were just another olive picker's son. The next, you're handed a tortoise-shell lyre with its polished horn arms and gut strings and told to listen. Listen, copy, perform. The first time you plucked the instrument, you winced. Not from pain, but from the strange way everyone turned toward you. Music isn't entertainment here. It's worship. It's politics. It's flattery and manipulation honeyed with melody. You learn early that a well-played tune can save you from punishment. Just as easily, it can bring it. You're enrolled in a musicoi school run by a retired court musician who keeps his old bronze sandals hanging above the door like a pair of cursed relics. He tells stories between lessons. Not of glory, but of the time a king ordered a performer's tongue cut out for playing a love ballad during a funeral. You try to laugh, but it doesn't sound like a joke. Your days are divided. Morning theory. Scales, modes, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, all the ways to signal emotion without saying a word. Midday practice until your fingers blister. Evening performance drills. You must sing on cue, shift tone, mid-verse, adapt when your patron raises a brow. Every gesture is a test. Every test has consequences. By 16, your calluses are permanent. You don't remember what your voice sounded like before it was trained to mimic sadness, then joy, then grief. You've performed for soldiers returning from war, women mourning their husbands, and nobles too drunk to remember your name. You've been tipped in coins, spat on, embraced, ignored. You learn something crucial: the music isn't yours. Not the melody, not the message, not the moment. It belongs to whoever pays for it. The general wants triumph. You write him a war chant. The widow wants sorrow. You weep with your strings, but never for yourself. It's late one evening when you make your first mistake. A guest, a wine merchant from Corinth, requests a sea shanty. You begin strumming confidently, voice steady. Midway through, you shift into a rhythm you invented. A small flair, a personal touch, just enough to make it yours. Silence falls. You don't even see the wine goblet flying. You only feel the sting as it strikes your cheekbone and shatters against the lyre. The merchant is red-faced. "You think I asked for improvisation," he spits. That night, your master doesn't scold you. He doesn't need to. The welt across your face is punishment enough. He merely says, "They don't come for you. They come for what you sound like. Don't forget that." You don't. You begin to notice how the best musicians stop smiling, how their hands tremble before a performance, how they flinch at compliments always waiting for the insult buried underneath. And you wonder late at night why the gods gave Orpheus such a beautiful gift only to let it be his undoing. Why did the muses inspire men if the world punishes them for creation, still you play? Because it's all you can do, and because one day, just maybe, you'll find a stage where the music is yours again. But not tonight. Tonight, you tune the lyre once more. The feast is about to begin. The governor's in a mood, and your fingers must dance the line between flattery and fear. The feast begins with a thud, meat slapped onto silver trays, bronze cups overflowing with diluted wine and laughter, loud enough to rattle the columns. You remain just outside the circle of flickering oil lamps, your figure half swallowed by the shadows. That's how they like you, visible only when needed, invisible when not. A musical specter summoned with a nod. A servant beckons. You glide forward, bow your head, and kneel beside a pillar like a shrine offering. The governor raises a hand, not in greeting, but in rhythm, and you begin. A delicate drone first, then a trickle of melody, something humble. You learned this piece from an old Thracian who played with a broken thumb. It's simple, soothing, impossible to offend. Safe. But safe rarely satisfies. The governor interrupts with a lazy wave. "Play something." "Bolder," he murmurs through a mouthful of lamb. A few heads turn. A bold piece in front of his court. You hesitate, heart thudding a little harder. This is where so many of your kind falter. Too timid, and they call you dull. Too daring, and you're dismissed, or worse. Still kneeling, you let your fingers drift into a more lively scale, one that quickens the pulse without leaping into scandal. You craft it like a tightrope walk, each note carefully chosen to suggest flair without overstepping. Around you, the chatter dips. People are listening. Your stomach clenches, not with fear, but with something worse, hope. Hope that for once they might hear you. Not your training, not your caution. You. Then a sharp laugh cuts through the music. It's a young noble one of the governor's cousins, likely drunk, certainly cruel. "That's the same progression they used at my brother's funeral," he slurs. "What are we mourning something?" The room stiffens. You freeze. The governor's eyes narrow. "I said bolder," he repeats. A single drop of sweat slips from your temple. And now you must decide. You shift modes, something foreign, something Eastern. A Phrygian twist with a dissonant edge. The mood darkens just slightly, but it draws the room in. Even the laughing noble shuts up, brows furrowing, as he tries to make sense of the tension you've created. You carry them through the movement, like a ferryman across a narrow channel. And when you finally resolve the chord, there's a breath of silence before the clapping begins. The governor smiles. You survive. But the taste in your mouth isn't relief. It's exhaustion. It's the constant calculation, the unending shape-shifting. You don't perform songs, you perform people's moods. You've become an emotional mirror, always reflecting, never revealing. And yet some envy you. A merchant's daughter corners you later by the columned entrance. She's maybe 17, dressed in linen dyed richer than your master's best cloak. You're lucky, she whispers. You get to create beauty. You stare at her. Beauty. You haven't played a note of your own in 3 years. That night when the guests have stumbled home and the last oil lamp is extinguished, you retreat to your corner of the servants' quarters. You cradle the lyre not as a tool, but as a weight. You remember when it once felt like wings. Now it's shackles strung with gut string melodies. You try to write something just for yourself, but it doesn't come. All your thoughts are shaped by fear, by memory, by preemptive editing. You hum one line, then stop. That's too cheerful, they'd hate that. Another line, too foreign, too slow, too personal. Every phrase is poisoned by anticipation. Eventually, you lie back, stare at the rafters, and listen to the faint rustle of the sea breeze through cracked shutters. You wonder if any of the greats, Terpander Arion, even the mythical Linus, ever felt this hollow. They say music came from the gods, but maybe the gods grew tired of mortals warping it for coin, for vanity, for flattery. The next day, your master assigns you to a private audience with a new patron, a Spartan dignitary staying 2 nights before returning to the Peloponnese. You prepare the usual repertoire: martial hymns, war ballads, odes to strength. But when you arrive, he does something unexpected. He waves everyone out of the chamber. You're alone. The man is tall, graying, with a warrior's gaze. Play something sad, he says. That's it. No title, no theme, just a mood. You falter. And then, strangely, you begin to play not a known tune, not one of the state-sanctioned hymns, but a quiet, halting melody that comes from the space between your ribs. It's a song without words, a slow, aching thing, something closer to a confession than a composition. The dignitary doesn't speak. He just listens. Eyes closed, hands clasped. When you finish, he says, "That was real. Don't forget how to do that." You leave without payment. But for the first time in months, your fingers tingle, not from overuse, but from having touched something honest. Still, you know what waits tomorrow: another banquet, another request, another battle with expectation. But that night, you fall asleep humming the ghost of that sad little melody. It's not much, but it's yours. The next morning, the marketplace is already awake by the time you step into its heat. Pots clatter. Merchants bark prices like war cries. Somewhere a goat escapes its tether and is chased down by a boy no older than you were when you first picked up a lyre. You should be heading straight to rehearsal, but something tugs at your feet. Instead, you meander toward the edge of the agora, where the philosophers and cynics gather not to shop, but to argue in the shade. You hover on the edge of their circle, unseen as usual. A skinny man, with eyes like olives and fingers stained with ink, is debating loudly about divine inspiration. He insists music should be free from coin, that beauty exists for its own sake. Someone scoffs. Another replies, "Tell that to the man who has to eat." And the circle erupts into laughter. You slip away, because you already know the truth. In this world, inspiration doesn't pay for olive oil or new sandals, and certainly not for your place in the sleeping quarters. The music might be divine, but your body, your fingers, your cracked voice, they belong to mortals. Back at the villa, the governor has new guests. Foreigners this time. Phoenician, maybe. They wear jewelry that gleams like sunlight on wine, and they speak with thick accents that make every word sound like a spell. You're told to prepare something exotic, something with flair, something that doesn't sound too Greek. So you spend your afternoon stitching together borrowed rhythms, strange intervals, and fragments of melodies you heard once during a festival when a traveling bard passed through town. You don't know what they mean. You don't know if they're authentic. But they're foreign enough to please. That night, as you strum and sway, you catch one of the guests whispering in their native tongue. A chuckle follows. You don't know what they said, but the way they look at you, like a trick animal performing on cue, tells you everything. You're not a musician to them. You're a curiosity, a novelty. After the performance, you're given a slice of honey-soaked fig cake and dismissed. You eat it in silence. In the following days, you begin to notice more and more how your talent has made you both visible and invisible. When you're silent, you're nobody. When you play, you're everyone's. They touch your instrument like it's theirs. They comment on your voice, your hands, your posture. Never you, always the parts. You're a mosaic of pleasing functions, not a whole person. Even praise begins to sound like possession. And yet you keep playing, because what else is there? There's no apprenticeship in the city that pays half as well. No path to citizenship. No family trade to return to. Music saved you once from hunger, from the fields, from war. But now it holds you like a golden cage. Polished, decorated, locked. Still moments slip through the cracks. A garden serenade for a sick child who claps too early but with honest joy. An evening spent tuning a broken instrument for a fellow player who actually listens when you speak. A song that spills from your fingers before your brain can interfere and for a fleeting second feels like flying. But those moments are rare. Most days you're a performer in someone else's play. The audience always hungry. The applause always conditional. One afternoon during a lull between rehearsals, you sneak away to the docks. It's not rebellion, it's escape. The sea wind is sharp with salt, and the ropes creak against wooden masts. You sit on the edge of a barrel and pluck soft chords while staring out at the horizon. A fisherman passes, hears a phrase of your music, and pauses. You play like someone who's seen ghosts, he mutters. You look up. He nods toward your lyre. Careful with that. Music can bind a man tighter than chains if he ain't careful. You think about that long after he's gone. That night, another performance. Another noble. Another forced smile. You do it all, the formal greeting, the predictable song, the small improvisation, to fake authenticity. It goes well. They praise you. They offer wine. But you excuse yourself early and return to your room. This time you don't practice. You don't play. You just sit there, hands in your lap, the instrument silent beside you. And in the quiet, you finally admit the thing you've tried to ignore. You don't know who you are without the lyre. You don't know who you were before it. You wonder bitterly whether Orpheus himself ever hated his own songs, whether he ever stared at his hands and wished they'd been clumsy instead of gifted, whether the gods gave him music not as a gift, but as a test he failed when he turned around in the underworld. Because that's what it feels like, walking forward, always forward, never allowed to turn and look back at who you once were. And yet, despite it all, you reach for the lyre once more. Because maybe tomorrow, in some dusty square or quiet room, you'll find a note that belongs to you again. Morning brings chores, not melodies. You're awoken before the sun has properly stretched over the rooftops, handed a basket of linens, and pointed toward the baths. There's no glamour in the scrub work, no applause when you wring out the governor's towels. But even this has become a kind of rhythm. Scrub, twist, rinse. Like a silent percussion keeping time until the next performance. Later, you're summoned to the courtyard. It's a warm afternoon, thick with the scent of figs and overripe olives. The governor's wife is entertaining a group of matrons from neighboring estates, and they've requested a gentle accompaniment for their gossip. No lyrics, just something soft and sweet in the background. You are to be audible but never intrusive. A musical scent, not a presence. You kneel by the fountain and begin. The lyre cradled in your arms feels heavier than usual. You pluck a soft series of notes, nothing too demanding, just lilting arpeggios stitched together from half-remembered lullabies. They barely notice you. That's the point. As the women murmur over each other's scandals, you drift into autopilot. Your fingers move, but your mind wanders. You imagine taking the lyre and smashing it against the marble base of the fountain. You imagine standing and screaming, really screaming, until your voice breaks, and someone finally sees you as more than a source of ambient mood. But you don't. You finish your set, rise silently, and vanish back into the villa before they even realize the music has stopped. That evening, a rare break. No performances, no requests. You're given a single coin and the freedom to leave the villa until dusk. It feels strange, like being unshackled for a few hours. Your legs almost don't believe they can walk without purpose. But they carry you to the outskirts where the houses thin and the grass begins. There's a ruined shrine there. Abandoned long ago, no cult, no priest, no offerings. Just stone walls, ivy-choked columns, and a breeze that whistles through the empty spaces like a flute in mourning. You sit at the base of a cracked pillar and tune your lyre by feel, not by form. For once, there's no audience. You play whatever rises up. It's not structured, not polished. It doesn't sound particularly good, but it's yours. You're halfway through a phrase, something quiet and haunting, when a voice interrupts. That's an Aeolian scale, it says. You flinch. A young man steps from the shadows of the shrine. Barefoot dust on his tunic, but a sharpness in his eyes that reads like hidden steel. You were about to resolve it wrong, he adds casually, kneeling beside you. You blink. I wasn't playing for anyone. He shrugs. Doesn't mean you shouldn't play it well. You bristle at first. Another critic. Another self-appointed expert. But something about his tone lacks the usual cruelty. He isn't mocking. He's observing. You retune the final string, try again. This time it lands. He nods. Turns out he's a runaway used to play at symposiums until a patron broke his wrist over a missed harmony. Now he wanders from shrine to shrine, playing only for the wind. It's quieter, he says. Honest, too. You talk for hours. Not just about music, but about everything it touches. Memory, anger, silence. He tells you about a secret society of musicians in Athens who play only for each other. No applause, no masters. Just music shared like bread among equals. It sounds impossible, which is exactly why you want to believe it. He leaves before dusk, disappearing down a goat trail, like smoke through fingers. You don't even catch his name, but the seed he plants stays. You return to the villa different, not freer, but with a thread of something buried in your chest. A thread that hums like a low note on the edge of hearing. The next performance comes quickly. A visiting dramatist from Thebes wants accompaniment for his recitation. It's long, overwrought, and soaked in metaphors no one understands. You're told to elevate his words with mood shifts and musical punctuation. Basically make him sound better than he is. You do it. Perfectly. And when it's over, when he bows and takes your place in the applause, you smile. Not because you're proud, but because now you're in on the joke. The clapping is hollow. The praise is directed to the wrong person, but you know who carried the moment. You did. alone. That night you play again at the ruined shrine. No audience, no scale corrections. Just a song that stitches your day to your breath to your past. And for once, it doesn't feel cursed to play. It feels like remembering something you thought you lost. The shrine becomes your secret. Each time the villa grants you a sliver of freedom, an hour unsupervised, a late return from the market, you find yourself slipping back to that ruined place. No one asks where you go. No one cares so long as you perform on cue and stay out of the noble's eye line. You begin bringing scraps of parchment, charcoal stolen from the cook's hearth, notes scribbled in haste, notations no one ever taught you how to write but which you invent on instinct. A personal language of dashes, curls, dots, pauses. You're composing, though you wouldn't call it that yet. You're just trying to trap a feeling before it escapes. One evening, as you play beside the altar stone, a fox watches you from the overgrowth. Not with fear, with curiosity. It doesn't run, just tilts its head listening. You pause mid-phrase and the fox blinks, then turns and vanishes into the trees. And somehow that tiny gesture feels more sincere than any standing ovation you've ever received. Back at the villa, things grow tense. The governor's eldest son is getting married, and the preparations are unraveling in all directions. There's shouting in the halls, dishes broken, servants dismissed without warning. You keep your head down, hands steady, voice obedient. Until one afternoon, a scroll arrives from the groom's tutor. He's written a poem, an original composition, to be performed during the wedding feast. It must be set to music, and you're expected to do it. You're handed the scroll like it's a basket of figs, but it might as well be a dagger. Because the poem is terrible. It stumbles, contradicts itself, has no meter to speak of. You try mapping it to every mode you know, and it still sounds like a drunk rooster falling down a marble staircase. But you don't complain. You've learned better. Instead, you stay up late carving fragments of melody out of the nonsense, sewing transitions between awkward verses. You have to disguise the weak lines with clever progressions, coax attention away from the worst metaphors with sudden tempo shifts. By morning, it sounds decent, not good, but survivable. And when the day of the wedding arrives, you stand before the assembled guests, dressed in borrowed finery, and sing the whole dreadful piece like it came from Orpheus himself. The crowd is too drunk to notice. The groom is beaming, the bride politely bored. The governor raises his goblet and calls it divinely inspired. You nod and bow, but deep down you're burning. Not from shame, no. You've long swallowed that, but from the strange truth that you made it work. You took something broken and stitched it into a shape that passed. You know the music carried that performance, not the words. You know it was yours. And still, no one will remember. That night after the feast, you walk back to the shrine. You don't even wait for a break in your schedule. You simply disappear, sandals quiet on the stone path. You sit, you breathe, you play something wordless, something that pushes against the walls of everything you've been told to perform. Halfway through, you notice someone standing behind a pillar. Your heart lurches. It's the young man from before the barefoot runaway. His wrist is healed now, though the scar remains like a pale vine up his forearm. He smiles. Still playing Aeolian scales, huh? You laugh. It comes out sharp and unexpected. He sits beside you. I came back to hear what it sounds like when no one's watching, and so you play again. But this time you don't play alone. He takes a flute from his cloak, carved from bone, etched with patterns that look older than the city itself. He matches your tempo, lets you lead, falls behind when your rhythm falters, catches you again with a gentle phrase. The duet builds slowly, imperfectly, but it breathes. And for the first time in years, you're not hiding behind someone else's words or moods or needs. You're simply playing. When it ends, he doesn't applaud. He just nods. That's music. You don't speak for a while. The wind through the columns does enough. Finally, he turns to go. Before he leaves, he says, "There's a gathering in the hills outside Eleusis. Musicians, mostly. No patrons. Just a fire, some wine, and enough space to remember what it's supposed to feel like. He doesn't ask you to come. He doesn't need to." You sleep lightly that night, hands resting on your lyre like a promise. You know your place at the villa is still intact. Your position, your pay, your bed. But suddenly it all feels negotiable. Not because you're ungrateful, but because you've seen the edge of something freer. And once you see it, it's impossible not to wonder what lies beyond the song you've always been told to play. You begin counting the days, not aloud, not in writing, but in the folds of your thoughts. Every scraped bowl, every bowed head, every note played for someone else becomes a tally mark towards something quietly building inside you. You haven't told anyone, not even your master, who's begun to notice that your eyes don't settle like they used to. Your performances remain flawless. If anything, you play better than ever. But it's hollow. Hollow like a vase with no flower, a flute with no breath. Because now when they say, play something moving, you wonder. Moving for whom? And when they ask for joy, you think about that fire outside Eleusis, the one you haven't seen but already hear in your head. One night, a guest at the villa, a priest from Delphi, requests a hymn to Apollo. You've played it 100 times, maybe more. Your fingers know it without guidance. But this time you slip. Not a wrong note, no nothing anyone else notices, but a subtle shift in phrasing, a stretch of rhythm, a hesitation before the final chord. It feels different, more like prayer than performance. The priest stares at you for a long time afterward. He doesn't speak, just nods once and leaves you with an almond tucked in your palm. For the road, he murmurs. You don't ask which road. A few days later, you return to the shrine and find a bundle tucked behind a broken column, dried olives, a skin of watered wine, and a short note scratched into bark. Come if you're ready. Eleusis waits. Your heart kicks like a startled horse. That night, you sit up in your cot, staring at the ceiling's shadows. You think about everything you'd leave behind, the routine, the safety, the coin, the people who, though distant, still know your name. You remember the beatings you narrowly avoided, the patrons who smiled while making threats, the applause that never truly belonged to you. But you also think about the music that never made it past your throat, the songs written on scraps hidden under your mattress, the way your hands tremble, not from fear anymore, but from a longing to just be. You don't sleep. By dawn, you've packed everything you need, 2 lengths of string, a wedge of bread, the almond, and your lyre. You leave the coin under your pillow. A quiet thank you, a clean parting. The streets are still fogged when you leave. Dogs bark distantly. Fishermen pull in nets. No one stops you. No one even looks. You are, as you have always been, a shadow between performances. The road to Eleusis isn't a road at all, more like a thread unraveling from the hem of the city, winding through groves and dusty hills. You walk until your sandals wear thin. You sleep once under a fig tree, clutching your lyre like a child clutches a doll. And then after what might be 2 days or 3 time bends when you're alone, you find it. A clearing. No sign, no temple. Just a circle of stones, the remains of a fire, and 4 people already waiting. They look up when you arrive. One grins. You know him, the runaway with the bone flute. He gestures toward the circle. You're late, he says, though you know you aren't. You sit. No questions, no demands, no patrons. One woman has a tambourine with half the bells missing. Another holds a kithara patched with beeswax. A third hums tunelessly, shaping melodies as she breathes. You watch. You wait. And then for the first time in your life, someone turns to you and says, "What do you want to play?" The question stuns you. Not because it's bold, but because you don't have an answer ready. No one's ever asked. Not your master, not the governor, not even your parents long ago. For a moment your mouth opens and nothing comes out. Then you lift the lyre. You pluck one note, then another. No plan, no performance. Just sound rising like smoke into the branches above. The others follow, not to lead, not to correct, just to meet you. The rhythm emerges slowly, like something blooming in moonlight. It's clumsy, it stumbles, but it breathes. And when it ends, there is no applause, only silence. Grateful, warm silence. The runaway nods, the others smile. And you finally understand. You were never cursed for being a musician. You were cursed for being owned. And now for the first time, you're not. You wake to birdsong and ash. The fire burned low in the night, and someone, maybe the woman with the tambourine, has already begun heating water over the coals. There's no schedule, no morning bell, just the rising sun, the stretch of aching limbs, and the first notes of music drifting lazily through the trees. This is the rhythm now. You spend your days in a strange kind of freedom, one where your value isn't measured by the elegance of your execution, but by your willingness to listen. No one assigns roles. Some play, some watch, some wander and return only when the music draws them back. No one demands you be in tune with anything other than yourself. At first, you're unsure what to do with that kind of permission. You're used to precision, to reading people's expectations like sheet music, tuning your tone to their frowns, their sighs, their wealth. But now you fumble. You try too hard, then not enough. You play pieces halfway through and stop. No one laughs. No one scolds. They just wait, or nod, or pick up where you left off. It's disorienting. It's exhilarating. By the second week, your fingers have changed. Not just calloused, they've loosened. They wander. They explore places your training would have slapped away. You begin using the body of your lyre for percussion. You experiment with silence, with pauses so long they almost turn the song into a whisper. And slowly, something wild and wordless starts to return joy. Not the joy you faked at feasts or learned in scales, but a deep, slow joy that feels like honey slipping down the back of your throat. It doesn't ask for recognition. It doesn't need it. Sometimes when the others sleep, you sneak away to the edge of the hill overlooking the plain. From there, you can just make out the city. The rooftops glinting under the sun, the columns stacked like bones. It looks small from here, distant, like a life that belonged to someone else. You think about going back, not because you miss it, but because part of you still wonders if it was real, if the applause, the tension, the careful performance of being useful might return to reclaim you. But then someone calls your name. Your real name, not the nickname your master gave you, not the mockery the guests whispered behind their cups. The name your mother gave you, the one almost forgotten under years of obedience. You turn. It's the flute player. He doesn't say anything, just holds up his instrument and lifts a brow. You nod. You play. The music that follows is unlike anything you've ever made. Not better, not even prettier, but truer. It weaves your doubts, your dreams, your days spent scrubbing and performing, your nights alone by candlelight, composing songs no one heard. The others join slowly. One adds a harmony so rough it scratches the air. Another claps out a beat on a clay jug. The tambourine jingles in irregular pulses. But it fits. The imperfections belong. The song breathes like a living thing. You play until your fingers ache, until your voice cracks, until the sun has dipped and the air smells of cool earth and sweat. And when it's done, no one claps. They just sit in the quiet. One of them says, "That's what it means." You don't ask what they mean. You already know. The curse was never the music. It was never the gods. It wasn't even the patrons or the governor or the sting of a thrown goblet. The curse was silence. The silence of being told who to be, of being useful, decorative, obedient. But this unruly, beautiful sound built of flaws and freedom, this is the opposite of silence. This is healing. You lie on the earth that night with your lyre cradled beside you, not as a tool, not as a cage, but as something closer to a friend. And for the first time you dream not of performance, but of sound unmeasured. A river of tone with no banks to contain it. You sleep smiling, because now finally you belong to no one, except maybe the music itself. The days roll forward like soft waves, now indistinct, soothing, uncounted. Time doesn't shout here. It hums. You measure it in the way shadows shift across the clearing, or in the scent of pine warming under the afternoon sun. You've started to forget what it felt like to play for survival. Now you play because your hands ache if you don't. Because sometimes someone wakes in the middle of the night crying, and all you can offer is a low, steady tune until the shaking stops. Because someone else comes back from a long walk with a story that sounds better sung than told. Music here is woven into everything. It doesn't sit on a pedestal. It walks barefoot. It eats with sticky fingers and laughs mid-verse. No one here calls themselves a master. Not even the oldest among you, a gray-bearded man who once played in the amphitheaters of Delphi, and now spends half his mornings teaching a boy with no rhythm how to keep time using a pair of pebbles. You're learning too, always learning. You thought you knew all the modes, Dorian, Phrygian, Aeolian, but here you learn new ones. Not by name, but by feel. Modes that sound like rain on pottery, like homesickness, like the moment just before someone laughs. You begin to hear music in everything, in the wind, in your footfalls, in the silence between words. One morning you wake to find someone has restrung your lyre. Carefully, reverently. The new strings are finer, clearer. No one admits to it, but you have your suspicions. You play that morning with a different kind of clarity. Not louder, not faster, just cleaner. Like your sound has been unwrapped from gauze. Later that day, the woman with the tambourine asks you to help her craft a new rhythm, something celebratory for a friend's birthday. You sit together for hours, slapping stones, humming fragments, laughing at each other's failed attempts. It's play, pure play, but also something more, a collaboration that doesn't involve fear or approval or keeping someone else pleased. When the others hear it, they clap not with politeness, but with glee, the kind of clapping that comes with dancing feet and shoulders swaying. That night, someone says, "Oh, you don't play like someone who escaped. You play like someone who returned. You don't answer, not aloud. But you think about it long after the fire dims. Returned. Maybe that's the word. Not escaped the curse of being a musician, not broken the chain, but returned to what music was meant to be before it was twisted into decoration and duty, before it was strapped to banquet halls and bound to egos. You've even started singing again. At first, it was just under your breath, old melodies, fragments of lullabies from your childhood. But now your voice rises when you play, hesitant, then steady. Others join in. The lyrics don't matter. Half the time you make them up. What matters is that it's yours. And with each new morning, something inside you uncoils. You begin teaching one of the younger players, a girl who barely speaks, who plays with her eyes shut and her fingers clenched. You see yourself in her. The way she flinches when she makes a mistake. The way she watches your reactions more than she lets tune to her own sound. You don't correct her. You just play beside her. Slowly, patiently, until her hands soften and her eyes begin to open. One evening, she plucks a phrase that makes you freeze. It's familiar. A bar from one of your own pieces, the ones you scribbled back in the villa and thought lost to ash or memory. You stare. She shrugs. I found a scrap of parchment in the woodpile. She had copied it. You don't know what to say. No one's ever chosen to learn your music before. Not because they had to. Not because it was assigned. Just because they liked it. You don't cry, not quite. But that night, your song sounds like the stars had been listening all along. You've begun keeping a pouch of parchment scraps now. Not to hoard compositions or mark instructions, but to capture the phrases that seem to arrive out of nowhere. Those melodic flashes that come while fetching water, or while stirring lentils over the fire, or even while walking in silence beside someone who doesn't need to speak. You write these fragments quickly, without judgment. Sometimes they're a single line. Sometimes they twist and spiral across the grain of the page like ivy. You don't try to complete them. You just collect. And for the first time, it feels like music isn't leaking out of you, but flowing into you, filling the dry spaces that once felt cracked and empty. The girl you've been teaching her name is Kala you've learned asks you why you write them down. You pause for a moment before answering. Because I never thought I had anything worth keeping, you say quietly. But now, I think I might. She nods like she understands. Maybe she does. That night she plays a tune of her own. It's jagged and odd and completely new. It doesn't follow any of the old forms. It meanders like a drunk bee. But it's alive. And when she finishes, you grin like a fool. You don't praise her, you just ask, "Can you play it again? That's enough." The music circle has grown. A few more wanderers have joined an old woman who hums like a mourning dove and keeps time by tapping her walking stick. A boy with a cracked lyre who learned by listening through the walls of a music school he was never allowed to enter. They come bearing their own scars, their own stories, and yet no one asks them to perform, only to share. You realize something one evening as the fire pops and the wind plays softly through the pine trees. You've stopped being afraid of silence. In the villa, silence was dangerous. It meant the performance had gone wrong, that the patrons weren't pleased, that punishment might follow. Silence was a judgment. But here, silence is a part of the music. It's the space between breaths, the pause before laughter, the place where meaning lingers when sound is gone. You sit with it now. You trust it. And slowly others begin to sit with your silence too. The man with the bone flute. His name is Leon, you've learned, asks if you'd like to visit a gathering in a village 2 hills over. They have wine, he says, and stories. His eyes twinkle, and they've never heard a lyre like yours. You hesitate. Part of you still recoils at the idea of performing again, of stepping into the center of attention and becoming an object instead of a presence. But Leon sees it and shakes his head. No patrons, just people, just songs. And so you go. The path is rough, but the journey feels light. You carry only your lyre, your pouch of parchment, and a handful of olives wrapped in cloth. As you arrive, the sun is setting behind a crooked line of rooftops, and the villagers are already gathered around a wide, smoky fire. They greet you with nods, with space made around the circle. No announcements, no introductions, just warmth. Leon plays first something breathy and low that catches in your chest like nostalgia you didn't know you had. Then a child sings, off-key but fearless. Then a man recites a love poem that forgets its second half. They laugh. No one minds. And then it's your turn. You don't rise, you don't bow. You just sit back, rest your lyre on your knee, and play one of the fragments you've kept hidden for weeks. A small tune. A melody that feels like a memory of salt air and freedom. You sing no words. Let it speak for itself. When it ends, there's no clapping. Just a sigh like the wind has passed through everyone all at once. You glance up, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something else. And then the oldest woman there, wrapped in a threadbare shawl, says softly, "That's the kind of music that remembers who you are." You nod, throat tight, because that's exactly what it felt like. When the fire burns low and people begin to drift home, Leon nudges you. "See," he says, "not cursed, just misplaced." And you smile because he's right. Being a musician wasn't the curse. The curse was forgetting why you began. But now, with your fingers calloused by love instead of labor, with your parchment pouch full of unspoken songs, you know. You've found your way back. You stay in the village for 3 days. Not because you have to, but because no one asks you to leave. Every evening brings new music, imperfect, unpolished, alive. During the day, you help with what you can, fetching water, mending fences, grinding herbs. You play only when the urge rises. No schedules, no requests. By the second evening, people begin to ask where you learned. Not in the boastful way, not who trained you, but how did that sound find its way into your fingers? You don't give them the full story. Not yet. You just smile and say, "It took a while to remember." One girl, barely 10, follows you everywhere. She hums tunelessly while you walk, tugs at your cloak, until you teach her how to pluck a simple chord. She strums like she's brushing crumbs from the strings. Her joy is chaotic. You adore it. She's never had a teacher. Just ears and instinct. You give her one of your parchment scraps. A tiny melody with a few scribbled notes. Nothing grand. Just something to grow into. She clutches it like a treasure. On the third night, the villagers invite you to share a longer song. A full piece, one of yours, they say. If you want. You do. You reach deep into your pouch, find a half-finished melody that never quite fit back when you were told what a song should be. It's crooked, unstable, shaped like a winding road that never settles. But you trust it now. You play. This time you sing. Quiet at first, then steady. The words are your own. About firelight, about being forgotten and found again, about music that bends but doesn't break. No one speaks when it ends. One man, eyes shining, leans forward and says, "You've been in places the rest of us only guess at." You nod, humbled. You stay one more night. Sleep under the stars. No roof, no marble, just sky. In the morning, Kala arrives. She's come all this way from the clearing dust on her tunic, her lyre slung like a bow. "They said you came here," she says. "I want to learn more." So you walk back together. Along the way, you teach her a phrase from a new song you've been building in your mind. She repeats it, adds something. You adjust. She laughs. You correct each other without shame. It's a duet forming slowly. Back at the clearing, more musicians have gathered. Word has spread. Some come for a night. Some stay. The music is richer now, bolder. Not because the players are better, but because they believe in the sound they make. You've become part of something. Not a school, not a guild, nothing official, just a living thing. A thread of defiance braided with harmony. One night, Leon brings parchment and ink. "We should write some of this down," he says. "Not for rules, for memory." You help. You notate not just music, but moments, how it felt to play this or that, the shape of the silence between verses, the kind of wind that blew when someone first found the rhythm. It's not a scroll of technique. It's a diary of sound. You write your name at the bottom, your full name. No aliases, no stage name, just you. A musician, whole, free. One evening, as fire crackles and Kala plays a tune you once composed in secret, someone asks, "Do you ever miss it?" The villa, the patrons. The applause, you smile. Sometimes you admit, but only because I never realized how quiet applause really is compared to this. You gesture around. Laughter, dissonance, experiment, joy, music, real music. You sleep that night with your lyre beside you like always, but this time not to protect it, to share space with it, like an old friend. Autumn creeps into the hills without ceremony. One morning you wake and the air has teeth. Leaves have begun their slow surrender, turning brittle at the edges. The music circle doesn't stop, it simply changes key. Songs grow slower, fuller. Rhythms mellow. People sit closer. Fires burn longer. You start to hear silence again, but now it's soft welcome like wool on skin. There's a sense that something is ending, though no one says it aloud. Not the circle itself, no, that remains, but a season, a chapter, something unnamed. You've begun composing again. Not for coin, not for approval, just to see what happens when your fingers follow a feeling all the way through. You start a piece one dusk and finish it the next dawn. You forget to sleep. You don't care. When you finally play it, the others don't speak. They just lean in, listening with their whole bodies. Kala is there, always. Her playing has changed, less hesitant, more fearless. She no longer watches your hands. She listens with her chest, with her breath. Sometimes she corrects you. You love her for that. You teach each other constantly. Not like master and student, but like mirrors. She teaches you to stay curious. You teach her to trust silence. You share parchment scraps, scribbled rhythms, secret lines of melody hummed into the dark. One night as you sit beside the fire watching embers spiral into the sky, Leon says, "You ever think about going back, not to serve, to play, in the city, on your terms?" You blink at him. "People need to hear music that isn't chained," he continues. "They think beauty only exists when someone powerful allows it. What if they heard something real?" The idea snags in you, not because you long for the marble halls or the praise, but because you remember the faces of servants still there. The young boys too afraid to look up. The girls learning to play in ways that twist their spines and bend their spirits. You could go back, not to belong, but to disrupt. You turn the thought over and over. The next day, as you gather figs with Calla, you say, "What if we played outside the theater gates, just us? One lyre, one voice. Let them hear what we've made here." She doesn't even pause. "I'm in." So you plan. Not a performance, a presence. You leave the clearing early one morning with only what you need: your lyre, your parchment, a few coins from a passing trader who insisted on paying for your lullaby. Calla walks beside you, her own instrument wrapped in linen. Leon watches you leave, nodding once with a look that says, "Everything go. Change something." You reach the city by midday. Nothing's changed. The streets are still loud, the faces still hard, the merchants still shouting. But you're different now. You walk through the crowds, not as a servant, not as a shadow, but as someone who chose to be here. You sit on the temple steps, the sun high, the guards bored. You tune your lyre. Calla nods once, and then you begin. The first song is simple, something the clearing gave you, a tune like wind threading through cypress, the kind that makes people pause without realizing it. One by one they do, a few at first, then more. A girl in a servant's robe stops. Her eyes widen. She stands there, stunned, as if remembering something she didn't know she forgot. A noble frowns, unsure whether he's allowed to enjoy it. He doesn't leave. A boy who once spat near your feet when you served at the villa now stands perfectly still, listening. You and Calla don't look up. You don't need to. You feel the shift. You feel the silence deepen, not in discomfort, but in awe. When the song ends, there's no applause, just breath, just presence. And in that space you speak not with words, but with your second song. A melody about freedom, about reclaiming, about remembering who you were before the chain was disguised as a string. This time Calla sings. Her voice trembles, but it holds. When you finish, the people begin to clap. Not politely, not eagerly, honestly. And for the first time in a city that once fed on your fear, you play not to please but to awaken. The city doesn't erupt. It doesn't crumble. No guards drag you away. No masters thunder down the steps demanding silence. Instead, something quieter happens, something deeper. People stay. Not all, but enough. Enough to matter. The servants linger the longest. They edge closer as if drawn not just by the music, but by the permission it grants. Permission to stop, to feel, to remember. They don't speak. They don't clap between songs. But their stillness is the loudest response you've ever heard. You play until your fingers ache, until the light slips behind the western hills and the stone beneath you cools. Then you stop, no bow, no smile, no coin bowl. You just gather your things, nod once to Calla, and walk away. No one follows, but they watch. You don't go back to the clearing just yet. You find a quiet place on the city's edge, a garden wall you once scrubbed clean as a child. It's overgrown now. Wildflowers sprout through its cracks. You sleep there that night, your lyre across your chest, dreaming not of escape, but of echo. Because the sound you left behind on those temple steps will ripple. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. You spend the next few days moving from square to square. You never announce yourselves. You never repeat the same song twice. Sometimes only a handful stop. Other times a crowd thickens, tightens, holds its breath. You don't mind either way, because the songs aren't for them. They're with them. One morning as you tune the lyre beside a statue of Athena, a boy approaches you. Dirt on his face. Shirt too thin for the season. He doesn't ask for food. He doesn't ask for money. He asks, how do you make it sound like that? You don't understand at first, like what you ask. He points to your chest, like it comes from in there. You crouch down, offer him the lyre. He hesitates. You nod. Try. He plucks one string, grimaces. It buzzes. He tries again. Better than again. A tiny rhythm emerges. It's clumsy, but it's his. You place your hand over his. Guide him just slightly. And as you do, you realize you're doing what no one ever did for you, showing him that music isn't a trick. It isn't a role. It's a reflection. Kala joins in softly, clapping out a rhythm on her knees. The boy laughs genuinely freely. A real laugh in the middle of a world that forgot how rare those are. A few passers-by pause. Some smile. One noble sneers. But none of that matters, because the boy's still playing. Later that day, a merchant offers you coin. You decline. He insists, so you ask for parchment and ink instead. You write down the boy's rhythm, just a few notes, but you hand it to him like a relic. You started this, you say. Now keep going. His hands shake when he takes the paper. That night, you and Kala return to the garden wall. It's grown colder. You huddle together under a thin blanket, your instruments between you. You don't speak much. You don't need to. The stars above remind you of the ones above the clearing. You wonder if Leon is still playing, if someone new has joined, if your parchment scraps still flutter in the wind by the fire. You hope so. You miss them. But not in a way that aches. More like how you miss a home you know is still waiting. The next morning you wake to music not your own. It's faint, uncertain. You rise, peek over the wall. The boy is back, plucking his melody over and over, building it, shaping it, owning it. You smile. Because now you know this was never about freeing yourself alone. It was about planting something. A sound. A story. A different way. And it's begun to grow. The city begins to notice. Not all at once and not from the top. The villas still hum with banquets and hollow laughter. The nobles still summon musicians to decorate their moods. But in the streets, in the alleys, in the corners, no one powerful bothers to look. Your songs are spreading like candlelight through fog. They don't even stay yours. And that's the best part. You hear one of your melodies, something you composed with Kala by the fig tree, sung back to you by a washerwoman balancing a bundle of linen. It's slower now. The notes wobble, but it's alive. You don't correct her. You just listen, hand on your lyre, stunned. Later in the market, a butcher whistles one of your half-finished refrains between cleaver swings. Across the square, two boys try to echo it on tin pipes. The second verse is all wrong, but it's also better. This is how it should be. Music that belongs to the air, not the stage. You and Kala play wherever the sun reaches. Temple steps, dusty courtyards, the edge of a grain field outside the city wall. Sometimes no one listens. Sometimes too many do. But the goal isn't to be heard. It's to be felt. One day you return to the place you once called home, the villa. Not inside, just outside the wall. You sit beneath the same olive tree where you first composed in secret. You play a piece they never let you finish. The one you used to whisper to yourself after punishments. The one you buried under duties and fear. This time you let it breathe. No one comes out. But a kitchen girl peeks from a window, flour dust on her cheek, and you catch her humming the tune later that week in the market. You don't need to be seen, just heard. You begin leaving parchment scraps behind, on benches, tucked under loose stones, folded into empty jars. Not with your name, not with signatures. Just notes, just rhythm, just possibilities. Some disappear, some return to you days later filled in. Changed, a duet of strangers. It becomes a game. Kala starts leaving scraps too, hers are messier, braver. She writes tiny challenges at the bottom, now you finish it. And they do. One morning a fisherman stops you mid-strum. I've heard that one, he says, frowning thoughtfully. My son learned it from the baker's apprentice who got it from a girl outside the city gate. You nod, trying not to smile too much. Don't know who made it, he continues. But whoever did, they must have had something to say. You bow your head and play another. That night, Kala asks, do you think we're changing anything? You glance around the small camp you've made outside the old cemetery wall. There's a boy nearby practicing scales, a woman notating lyrics with a lump of charcoal, a stray dog curled up beside a lyre case. All of them strangers 3 moons ago. I don't think we're changing everything you say, but we're changing someone, and that's enough. She lies back on the grass. Do you think we'll ever go back to the clearing? You think about Leon, the tambourine woman, the broken kithara boy, the night the fire cracked and the stars listened. Yes, you say, but not to stay, just to share. Because now you carry the clearing with you, in every note, in every silence, in every melody passed like bread from one hungry soul to another. And if the curse of being a musician was once to be used, to be owned, to be trapped in someone else's expectation, then this is the cure. Not glory, not perfection, but connection. A melody offered freely, and a world that slowly, softly is beginning to sing back. Winter settles in, and with it a different kind of music. The city grows quieter. Market shouts soften. Even the clatter of sandals on stone feels muffled by the cold. Smoke curls lazily from rooftops. People hunch into themselves. But still they hum. You hear it in passing bits of your melodies, mutated and mangled and beloved. A child reciting a rhythm as she counts pomegranate seeds. An old man strumming a makeshift lyre with only 3 strings and infinite patience. Kala calls it the secret orchestra. You call it home. You no longer keep count of days. There's no need. You mark time by what's been shared, by how many scraps you've passed along, how many harmonies you've helped shape. The city isn't changed, but it's tuned now, looser, truer, and something else happens. Other musicians begin to join. Not performers, not court favorites. Escaped notes, you call them. Men and women who once served at weddings, in temples, at banquets, now searching for something that doesn't cost their voice. One is a harpist who forgot her own name but remembers every chord she ever played. Another is a blind drummer who taps rhythms that sound like memory. They don't ask for instruction. They simply arrive, and the music swells to hold them. You hold gatherings now, not scheduled, not publicized, just whispers passed from ear to ear. They'll be at the courtyard with the cracked lion statue, or near the river after the third bell. People come, some to play, others to listen, some to cry. You always begin with silence, not to command attention, but to clear space, to let everything else fall away before the first note is born. One night you return to the shrine, the one where you first played freely, where ivy wrapped the columns and the air felt like truth. It's overgrown now, but still standing. You place your hand on the altar stone. Thank you, you whisper, not to a god, not even to a muse, but to the version of yourself that dared to play without permission. Calla sits beside you. She doesn't ask why you've come. She just begins to hum. You join her. The harmony is rough, unscripted, but it fits. You sleep there that night beneath stars that remember your first real song. In the morning, you find someone's carved a message into the base of one of the columns. I found my music again. If you're reading this, so will you. You run your fingers over the words. That's it. That's the whole point. Not legacy, not fame, but continuity. The music doesn't need to be remembered, only rediscovered, again and again, by anyone brave enough to listen to themselves. That evening, back in the city, you leave your last parchment scrap beneath the fountain wone, where you once performed for coin and praise. It reads, "You are not what they ask you to be. You are what you sound like when no one's listening." You don't sign it. No one needs to know your name. The song is already moving forward in 100 voices, in 100 forms. And you've never been more free. You wake one morning to the sound of someone else playing your music, and you don't even recognize it at first. It's been changed, evolved. Notes added, phrases dropped, the rhythm twisted into something more playful. But underneath it all, you feel it, that seed you planted. That tiny echo of a song you once wrote while sitting alone in fear, hoping no one would hear it, and everyone would. You smile. You don't interrupt. You sit back beneath the tree, close your eyes, and let it wash over you. You could correct the melody. You could name it. But why? This is what freedom sounds like: transformation without ownership. Music set loose. Calla joins you after a moment. She's carrying new scraps, some hers, some given to her by a girl from the potter's quarter who wanted to write a lament for her dead cat. Another from a boy who'd only ever played drums on jars, but figured out how to notate rhythm with dots and scratches. Calla's grin is infectious. "You ready to head south?" she asks. South. The sea. New cities. New stories. New music. You nod. You don't need to stay. The circle you started is no longer a circle. It's a spiral expanding. You've taught what you could. Now it's time to let others carry it forward in their own voices, their own forms. You pass by the temple steps one last time. Two children are playing there. One has a broken flute. The other is tapping two sticks. They're laughing, not performing. And still people pause to listen. Not many, but enough. You leave without saying a word. The road south winds like a melody you haven't written yet. Olive groves, dusty stones, the scent of rain on wind. You walk it with light steps. No fear, no need to impress. You've stopped needing to prove you're a musician. You are music now. Wherever you go, someone will ask, "Where did you learn to play like that?" And maybe sometimes you'll tell them about the villa, about the guests, the goblet, the bruises. Other times you'll tell them about the shrine, the fox, the clearing. But mostly you'll let them hear it for themselves. Because the real answer isn't a place or a teacher. It's this moment, this road, this song, the one you're still writing with every step. And someday, someone will find a parchment scrap in a broken lyre scrawled in a stranger's hand. It will say, "You're not cursed. You're just waiting to hear yourself." And they'll play. Just like you did. Just like you are. Now. So if you've made it this far, go ahead, let your body melt into the mattress or the sofa, wherever you are. Your eyelids have earned their heaviness. Your breath its rhythm. Let that final note settle in your chest, not loud, not urgent, just present, like a candle flickering behind your ribs. You've wandered through hills and courtyards, stood beneath olive trees and crumbling shrines, escaped the silence of performance into the hush of real expression. And now it's time to return, not to where you started, but to yourself, gently, slowly, without judgment. Let the sound of the lyre fade into your own pulse. Let the memories of cobbled streets and winter fires drift like smoke out the window. There's nothing left to fix, no tune to perfect, just this stillness, this comfort, this sense that somewhere in the dark, a song is still playing for you, and it always will. You don't need to perform anymore. You don't need to impress, to please, to calculate the perfect note. You've done more than enough. And if there's a silence now, good. That means you're listening. So rest now. Let your breath deepen. Let your muscles surrender. Let your thoughts dissolve like the last trace of sound in a twilight room. You are safe. You are heard. You are home.